Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So, thank you everyone for taking some time out of your day to join this webinar. And we are going to be recording it, so it will be available on the Win It Aces YouTube channel. You can go ahead and watch that later on, or share it with anyone. We'll be sure to share the links and information in our September newsletter from Win It Aces. So we'll go ahead and get started with just some introductions. My name is Jennifer Solf. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator with Win It Aces. We'll go ahead and move over to Kelsey.
Hello, I'm Kelsey I am a verification specialist and regional manager for Where Food Comes From, specifically the IMI Global Division.
Thank you.
I'm Laura Nolan. My husband and I ranch north of Win It. We have a cow-calf operation and use IMI and Where Food Comes From.
I'm Brenda Brady. I also ranch north of Win It and work with Kelsey with IMI.
Perfect. Thank you. I will first hand it off to Kelsey, and she can go ahead and share some further information with us. So you can go ahead and share your screen.
All right. Should be able just to see start of the slide decks here.
Perfect.
Perfect. Well, hello everyone, and welcome for those that are here live and those that are listening to this recording at a later date. Like I mentioned, my name is Kelsey I am a verification specialist for Where Food Comes From, specifically the IMI Global Division. I worked for IMI for, I think, about 7 years now. Laura and I were catching up a little bit before on how long we've worked together, but it's at least been 5 years. And so I worked in the Colorado office because that's where our headquarters is south of Denver and Castle Rock. And then I moved home about 5 years ago. So I get the joy of working from home, and I do some traveling a little bit for the company, but we have a main sales team that typically goes to conventions and video sales and things like that. I actually was at the Northern Sale on Monday this week. And then I just spent the last couple of days in Sheridan. So I blazed a trail home this morning to get things set up for our call today. So a little bit different week for me. Typically I'm answering calls and answering emails and kind of just the first forefront for customers when they have questions about their enrollment, or they want to get enrolled, or to order tags and things like that. So I'm just going to go through a little bit about the company, who we are, what we do. Hopefully I can slide through this. There we go. So I mentioned that IMI Global is a division of Where Food Comes From. So we have kind of these different divisions that specialize in different things. So IMI is our beef division primarily. We have some overlap with the IMI team into these other divisions too. So there's Where Food Comes From Organic. Validus is like our dairy care, pork care, anything related to dairy and pork is pretty much what that division does. Sure Harvest is actually a technology division. So they work with a lot of like wine growers and almond farms, and they're developing a lot of software type of things for those type of farms. And then Postelsia is actually our aquaculture division. So kind of a diverse group of people that makes up, I think last count, we have 120 staff members across all divisions of Where Food Comes From. So IMI was the starting division. That's how the whole company got started. It actually was in the founders, John and Leanne's garage when they first started it, when they lived in Kansas. Their background, John is very heavily on the technology side. And then Leanne grew up on a cow-calf ranch in New Mexico. And so she brought a lot of that knowledge to their marriage and to their what ended up being their business, their lifelong business now. And she worked for, I think, the USDA somewhere in there, Tyson. She kind of did quite a few different things. So they kind of merged their thoughts and developed IMI Global. And so here we are 26 years later, with all these different divisions and all these cool things that they've acquired over the years. The beef division in IMI is still very much the core of their business. It's the division that has the most staff members. I don't know if necessarily it's the most revenue on that side, but it's definitely their bread and butter division. So our beef customers mean a lot to our business. And then this slide's a little bit busy, but it just kind of gives a timeline of how we've been involved in the beef industry, and the traceability that has happened because of worldwide events, like Mad Cow in 2003. We developed the first USDA process verified program for export in 2005 because of some of that traceability that was in question, with some of our trading partners. We've worked with McDonald's, Canadian Roundtable. We were selected as the Whole Foods Supplier of the Year. Just some like really cool things that we've done over the years. And then in 2018, I was actually with the company when the Chinese market opened and they required source and age at a minimum. And since then, we have developed our Beef Passport program, which is our online tracking system. And I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation, just get into the details of what that program means. And then CARE. So CARE is our sustainability program, and we are now pushing through our 4th year of that program. And it started with beef and now has pork, poultry, and dairy. These next couple of slides are kind of some interesting fun facts, I guess, if you will, of why we do what we do, and part of the reason of why you should be involved in programs and have some sort of electronic traceability system. So the consumer better for me thoughts. When buying meat, 85% of shoppers make at least one better for me option. 37% better for the animal, 35% better for the planet, 34% better for the farmer worker. So looking for these type of claims in the meat case. So this is good consumer feedback from us on the ranching side of why are we doing all these things that we need to be doing, and what does this mean? Today's meat eaters are tuned into the general concept of sustainability, especially college-educated younger consumers. Know what it is. 86% of meat eaters are somewhat or very familiar with sustainability, which is a higher percentage than I actually thought it was going to be. Think about it. 68% of meat eaters think about it when purchasing non-grocery items. 21% of meat eaters think about it a great deal. Those who purchase claims-based meat products, 53% are looking for sustainably raised. 60% are looking for humanely raised. And those are claims that could be made on a label. So as they're comparing 2 or 3 products, that they're looking for something that would say sustainably raised or humanely raised. 56% of shoppers said it would be beneficial to have animal welfare ratings or certifications for meat, poultry you buy. 44% believe grocery stores provide enough information regarding their meat, poultry sourcing standards. 36% say they don't. 21% they said they don't know. So that's kind of the consumer side of this, the drive of what we do, why we do. So what is it that we do? So third-party verification is just that. Someone sets a standard. We come in and audit to that standard. So we're auditing you as the rancher or the background or the feed yard or the sale barn, whatever sector that you're in. So we're the third party that makes sure that you comply to that standard and that you stay compliant to that standard. So it does require some communication when things change, weather changes, health of cattle changes, some of those things that that you're dealing with on a daily basis, monthly basis. So I'm here to help you stay compliant to those standards that you are interested in enrolling in because of some sort of export verification or even a domestic market that is making one of those labeling claims. So our basis program is Source and Age. That's definitely been around the longest. It requires that an EID tag be in the cattle before they leave the ranch of origin or where they were born. It's basically, we call it a desk audit, meaning that Source and Age only does not require us to come to the ranch and do a visit. There is a percentage of ranches that may get pulled I think it's 3% of all approved Source and Ages. We do need to go on site and double check that the records that we were presented, and we would we would give someone a heads up if that was what was going to happen, is we were going to double check on that 3%. So age verification allows carcasses to bypass dentition and some physiological checks at the packer level. So I always word that as the age certificate trumps dentition. So that's why you would want to have an age certification, as it keeps that harvest floor moving along very quickly. They can see the age of the cattle coming in before they even get to the packer. They can read the tags while they're in the holding pens and reconfirm the age. So age has been a really important thing for labeling claims that make a 24 months harvest by or a 30 months harvest by. Age is never really, hasn't seen any fluctuations. It's always been a demand for age verified. And then source comes with that because we're verifying where those cattle were born and raised from. So in simple terms, for source and age, we look at your first and your last calf born dates. And then we look at some sort of head count support or an inventory. That inventory record can vary depending on what time of year we're doing the verification. So a good example of that is maybe we're doing source and age pre-calving. So before you've even started calving and you want to order your tags and have things ready to go and understand what you need to do before you even start calving. So we might be looking at a total bred cows on the ranch inventory, or maybe we're doing your audit after branding time and we're looking at a tally of total calves branded. So that inventory record can kind of vary depending on what time of year, but I always say that it should be the most current and the most accurate representation of your inventory. A shipping certificate is going to move with those cattle all the way through the supply chain, no matter what locations they go through. So will that EID tag that gets put in their ear before they leave. NHTC is non-hormone treated cattle. This just basically means that the calves to be enrolled cannot receive any hormones. So no implants. If you were enrolling an open heifer, she couldn't have received AI hormones or been given Lutalyse bangs vaccination or something like that, depending on what your ranch's management system is and what your vet's protocol recommendation is. So the calves to be enrolled cannot receive any hormones. One question that everyone always asks me is, can you enroll a calf out of an AI'd cow? And the answer is yes, because it's the calf itself has not been given those hormones. NHTC does require an annual audit, so an audit every 12 months. So if you have your audit in May this year, you will be due for renewal in May of next year. Then also requires that there's an inventory kept of those hormones. So if you do use Lutalyse or oxytocin, some of our cow-calf ranches will have those type of products on hand for various things, like a cow is not cleaning, or there was an accidental bull exposure to some first calf heifers or something like that. You know, various reasons that those type of products might be there, including if you do implant other cattle on the ranch, we might have some implants to inventory. And then the most common one is AI products, and that's going to vary depending on what your AI protocol is. So you can have those products on the ranch. We just confirm your procedures of what cattle get them, How do you identify those cattle for exclusion, and then maintain that you're keeping, like we call it, an in-out inventory or an in-used-out inventory. Some ranches don't have any hormones at all, so those questions and those part of the audit is not applicable to them. So it kind of just depends on what your ranch's procedures are. NHTC is unique in that cattle have to move through approved locations at all times, and those locations must be approved prior to receiving cattle. So a lot of our customers will sell through video sale because the cattle are not leaving the ranch. They're forward contracting for a later delivery date when those cattle are staying on the ranch as they get sold. So we don't have to worry about locations when you're selling them on a video sale. But if you were to market through a sale barn, that sale barn needs to be approved to receive program cattle. And then if they go to a backgrounder or a feed yard after that, that background or feed yard needs to be approved to receive program cattle as well. So those locations would get audited just like the ranch gets audited annually every 12 months. The thing that's the most important thing to relay about NHTC is that program exists because of the trade agreement that the US has with the European Union. So NHTC cattle are eligible for the EU market. There is also some domestic markets that will use the no hormones claim part of that, depending on what their labeling claim, what they're making, no hormones used, no hormones ever, depending on what that looks like. So they could use NHTC cattle to meet that requirement of a domestic branded beef program. Any questions before I jump into verified natural? Okay. So verified natural is a step above NHTC. This is a USDA program, so they set the standard. This just means that calves cannot receive hormones again, so it always includes NHTC. Shouldn't say always, more often than not, it will include an NHTC claim. They can't receive antibiotics, they can't receive ionophores and betas, so no Rumensin, no Bovatec, no CTC. And then the calves can't receive animal byproducts. So animal byproducts would be things like animal fat, hydrolyzed feather meal. We don't really see blood meal very much anymore in feed products, but something that would come from the rendering process that would be added, could be added to a feed. One thing that is probably the most common animal byproducts is in a milk replacer. That's where we commonly see the most use of animal byproducts, because there's bovine serum in there or animal fat, and that ups the protein and the fat content of that milk replacer so that it's a good product for you to use for your calves. So if you do end up giving a calf a milk replacer that has prohibited ingredients in it, that calf is no longer eligible for verified natural. So the same thing if you have to treat a calf with Draxxin or LA200 or something that would be categorized as an antibiotic, it's just that calf that's no longer eligible for verified natural. It doesn't change the status of the entire herd, just that single animal. So one of the sub requirements, I guess, of that is those calves have to be identified for exclusion from verified natural. And we work with each ranch to figure out what exclusion ID is gonna be best for them and make the most sense for their operation. Again, cattle have to move through approved locations for verified natural, the sale barn, the backgrounder, the feed yard, and they have to be audited prior to receiving program cattle. All three of these programs are USDA written programs. They set the standard. We're the third party that audits you as the rancher to their standard. Any other questions on these programs? I'm not gonna get too lengthy into them because I really want to talk about the CARE program. So CARE is our sustainability program. It has 3 different pillars. Animal care, which is all the questions that you could think about for related to the cattle. Cattle handling questions, herd health questions, antibiotic stewardship, transportation. It's the longest, most extensive, I guess, section of the 3 pillars. Environmental stewardship is the second one. So this one I always say is the ranch questions. Questions about your grazing management plan. Do you work with maybe a government entity for like EQIP or CSP, or you have CRP contracts? Because some of those records that you're involved in on those programs might apply for your grazing management plan on your ranch. You may have implemented some of the things that you learned from being in a CSP or an EQIP plan 10 or 15 years ago that you carried on to the ranch today. So we just ask you some questions related to your general grazing management. And that would include water, land use, erosion mitigation. We ask you some questions about, do you recycle? Do you use solar power or wind? So just kind of questions about the ranch itself. And then the third pillar is people and community. So this is about the people that take care of the ranch, that take care of the cattle. So this kind of all comes full circle when we pull in the people and community questions. So are you a family operation? Do you have employees? You can have either one or the other. And so then there's kind of a different set of questions depending on what your answer is under some of those. And there'll be some questions that are not applicable, like our family ranches that don't have employees. I still relay that, like, these questions are in here about your worker and your employee, but they're not applicable to you because you don't have a full-time employee. But I still relay them to you so that you're aware that they're part of the standard. So there might be some things that are not applicable to your operation, and that's not going to be a detriment to you. An NA response is different than a no response on how points are awarded. So as I mentioned, the points. So you have to score 70% or better to get the CARE stamp of approval. We don't expect you to meet 100% of the standards right out of the gate. That's kind of an unrealistic thing. However, I will say most of the cow-calf ranches that I work with in Montana and North Dakota specifically are scoring in the low 80s. Their very first year enrolled in the CARE program. So they're already a passing score without changing a single thing that they're already doing in their operation, because most ranchers are already doing all of the good things that we look for in the CARE standard. You're already doing sustainable type of claims, or you wouldn't be ranching where you are today. So this all kind of comes together to help define sustainability on a cow-calf ranch. What a really unique and kind of big thing to try to do. So that's what we've done with this CARE program, is help define sustainability on a cow-calf ranch. So the logistics of actually getting there, getting approved, and what does that whole process look like? So it's a 2-part audit process. The first part is building a quality manual. You can do that on your own through our online system, Beef Passport, or we can do that together over the phone with me or with someone like me on my team. That usually takes us about 1.5 hours to 2 hours when we do that together over the phone. If you were doing it on your own time, I would say it probably takes about the same amount of time. But the cool thing is, if you do it on your own time, you can pause and come back to it. So if you don't have a full 2-hour window, to get things done, you can work on it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes here and there. And then the second part of that is the annual on-site visit. So we want the quality manual to be done before you have your annual audit. Like I mentioned, there's the points at that 70% threshold to see what you score that first year to get a benchmark. One thing I didn't mention was there's kind of 3 different categories within those pillars. The core and the critical, those are questions that you need to respond to and have a passing score, or to get a passing score for the program. The advanced questions are going to push you above that 70%. So you don't necessarily have to answer the advanced questions, but when we go through that over the phone, we go through 100% of the questions for you. So benchmark the first year. What did you score? You scored 82%. Next year, let's see if we can get that score a little bit higher. Let's implement something on your operation. And that might be something that we do together. Maybe it's something that's already in process. Maybe you applied for being involved in CSP and that officially starts the next year, in 2025. And so we'll see that improvement on your grazing management records that we can apply towards your care program too. And then there is a licensing agreement if you did want to use the care logo on finished product or for marketing things. Our video sale entities that we work with, we verify the programs that you're approved for. So if you're listing on one of those video sale platforms, we'll approve the use of the care logo and any other various logos. So one thing I didn't specifically call out yet about this program is it's always going to be tied to source and age. So at a minimum, you'd be source and age care enrolled. You could be NHTC as well, and you could be verified natural as well, but you don't have to qualify for NHTC or natural to qualify for care. It can stand alone on its own. So it kind of just depends on what bundling offer you're looking for. My advice to you is if you're going to have an audit, you might as well be audited to all the programs that you're interested, that make sense for your operation, that's an attainable thing for you, because it does give your cattle more marketability. If you are marketing on one of those video sales, you'll get the NHTC buyer, you'll get the verified natural buyer, you'll get the care buyer, you'll get the buyer that's looking for care NHTC, the buyer that's looking for care natural, right? Like, so they're looking for different program levels of cattle. So the more programs you in, typically the more marketability your cattle have. Care also does require EID tags, and that's because it's always paired with the source and age program, because we're always going to verify the source of the cattle, and then hopefully we can verify age, that you're keeping those type of age records for it. Any specific questions on the care program itself? Because I'm just going to get into some stats of where we've seen growth and things like that over the years. Okay. So this is just some numbers so that you can see the growth. So keep in mind that this program was officially launched in January of 2020. So at the 2-year mark, we had 30 states and 850,000 head, over 806 locations. So we had pretty good growth the first 2 years. Then we had really great growth in our second and third year. And then, so that bottom one is just showing like the increase year over year. Unfortunately, this slide doesn't have anything more accurate through 24, because we run all of our stats calendar year. So we'll add in a 24 stat on this for our 25 presentations. Big question everyone always asks, well, why should I do this? I understand the consumer driving part of it, but what am I going to get out of it? So keep in mind, these numbers across the bottom, it says this, but premiums are based on 2018 through 2022 average premium prices from superior livestock video sales for a base weight of 600 pounds. So you'll see we did steers and heifers and then overall based on the programs. One thing that's really hard to track about the care program is the premium, because it could be tied with NHTC, it could be tied with natural, and it might be standalone. So when you're looking at just what did cattle that are care approved bring, you're trying to compare 4 different kinds of apples. So it's a little bit hard to track that premium, but the premium has been really, really steady for care approved cattle, especially the last couple of years, because as the program grew, and we got people enrolled in the program, so did demand, right? But someone had to take the jump. The premium driver, your buyer, they want to see that there can be cattle in the supply, how quickly the uptake is going to be, But you, before you jump into it, you want to know there's going to be a premium. And what's that premium going to look like? So it's kind of a little bit of give and take. And with the life cycle of beef cattle, it just takes a little bit of time. So I think in 5 years, the growth of this program has been really incredible on the customers, our ranchers that have supported the beef programs, that have changed their finished product labeling claims because this care program exists for sustainability. So yeah, these are just some premium numbers. Like I said, it's just through 2022, so nothing current. Since I was at the video sales this week, I will tell you that there has been a pretty good demand and a pretty good premium for program cattle. Overall, this summer, the market for cattle has been pretty good, pretty high, especially in years past. So if I'm being honest about it, that margin between a conventional and a program animal is tighter, so a lot smaller than it has been in the past, where we've seen, you know, big difference in a conventional animal and a program animal, just because the market is so high anyway. The margin that those buyers have, to the premium they have to pay for program cattle, isn't as big as it used to be. And that's just my personal opinion. There's no actual facts around gathering that. That's just me sitting at some of these video sales and seeing what those trends look like. Of course, every sale, depending on what corn prices are doing and what wheat and, you know, all those different numbers are coming out, that's going to affect the sale for that day. Like the Sheridan sale this week, specifically, the market was really down on Tuesday, but things picked up yesterday afternoon, and we're really good. A lot of Montana and Wyoming cattle sold on that Sheridan sale yesterday, and it was good to see a lot of smiling faces in the crowd and see some of my customers that were pretty excited for how things went for them. And even if they weren't my customer and do programs, it was still really good to be able to see some of those people and see smiles, just because the market is so good. So Beef Passport is our online tracking program for all things EID tags. We are slowly integrating more customer interaction with this program too. So our feed yards are using this program heavily, almost every day, especially if they're shipping to a packer daily, if not weekly. And then our backgrounders would be using this when they have cattle coming in and or leaving their yard. So depending on how often that's happening and what their cattle movement looks like, they might be using it pretty heavily for 6 weeks, twice a year. And then our cow-calf ranch customers, we're slowly integrating them into using this program a lot more. Right now, I can go in there and do everything for you on your behalf. And that's just the nature of how things have been for us for quite a few years, of us providing you certificates and us approving your tags. But we have the capability for you to report your leftover tag numbers through that system. Like I mentioned, you can do the care quality manual through that system. But we have, it's password protected. And then there's different levels of what you can see related to certain customer profiles. So some people will not be able to see a certain name on the source. They'll just be able to see like a number, like a code or number that you'd be issued, like a member number, I guess. So it is a safe platform for your information. We don't just share that with anybody. You have to be approved to have a login for it. But it will show every time a tag is read, it will show up on this cool little map. And so we can see the movements on that specific tag all the way until a claim, the final claim that would get added, is harvested. And then that would tell us that that animal is no longer alive. So we can't do anything with those programs after the animal has been harvested. So there's a kind of a process that happens with our team and with those locations that receive the program cattle, different steps that they have to do within the system. So it's a really cool program. I think it's only going to continue to see growth. It's our biggest changing platform, and honestly, from my side of it, we're learning something new every week. in this program that we can do for you as a customer, that is making my job easier and making quicker turnaround on different things that you might be doing with us. This is what an example of your producer dashboard would look like, or for your scorecard for the CARE program. So in this example, you'll see that the overall summary, this ranch scored 91.2%. So they were well above that 70% threshold. And that's cool because it breaks it down into what you scored in each of those sections. So this ranch was really high on their animal care, pretty good on their environmental stewardship, and then a little bit lower on their people and community, which is probably a standard trend. They kind of forget about the people and the operation sometimes. Sometimes there's some safety things that probably could be integrated into some ranches. Again, that's just feedback from me doing these conversations with customers. And a lot of the time people will come back and say, you know, I had a lot of food for thought after we had that conversation, or after I was enrolled in this program. And I think there's some good changes that we could integrate into this operation, and was just some good things for me to think about. And I love hearing that, because continuous improvement, whether you're actually making those changes real time right away, or it's something that happens in 2 years from now, like that's really positive sustainability, right, for ranching and for this program too. And then one last quick thing that I want to relay is, so one thing that we can do for you is this cool Storybit video series. And so since we launched in 2020 with the Storybit series, we featured 24 families, and there's been 13 million impressions across different social media platforms. Those are comments, engagements, shares, reviews, that kind of thing. So because of the different divisions, this is all across different types. So that's why you're seeing poultry and finished product and peaches and things like that. So these story bits are all kinds across the Where Food Comes From divisions. I had the fun of having one of my customers featured in the Storybit series last summer. They're a ranch near Sunburst, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the room when we got to watch that video at our auditor training last year. So it's just really cool to be able to interact with those customers and hear their story on this kind of platform, and a consumer facing platform, because the CARE program, that information is just between the two of us. No one else has access to the information you put in there. No one even has access to the score. If you share the score with someone, that's up to you, but we don't. It's either you're CARE approved or you're not when you're marketing from that. So all the cool things that I get to learn about your operation and that we get documented doesn't get shared with the consumer. But that's how the CARE program protects you, but also tells the story of ranching and how it's sustainable. So the Storybit series is a really cool one. And some of the videos, our marketing team has entered them into various, like, I don't even know the terminology, but like videographer contests and like different short movie contests, and they've done really well. So just some cool things that we're doing on the consumer side for you. And that's all I have. Hopefully short and sweet, not too much information overload, but does anybody have any specific questions for me? Yes, Bill.
So Kelsey, what has been the growth like in Montana? So how many clients do you have in Montana, and how many cattle does that represent?
That's a very good question. I should have pulled that statistic specifically, because we could track that in our system overall total. So program cattle is a niche market anyway. So if you compared that to the overall total number of cattle in Montana, it's going to look like a super small percentage. But I easily probably have 400 to 500 customers. And the ranch sizes is going to vary. So I wouldn't even know where to begin to tell you a total number of head. Because we'll work with some ranches that are enrolling 30 head, and we'll work with some that are enrolling 3,000 head. So I don't know what the average would be on something like that, but I suppose there's probably about 400 customers that we would be working with a Montana address, and that would be cow-calf. We have a few sale barns that are approved, and then we have a few backgrounding facilities. Some of them are traditional confinement backgrounders, and some of them are grass backgrounders, and then some of them are a little bit of both, running, stockers year round. We don't have any finishing feed yards in Montana that are approved on our side of things. So yeah, I would say probably about 400 total customers, with the head count being very variable.
Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah, I don't know how many beef producers there are in Montana, but that seems like a
Pretty good number.
good number.
Yeah, it's cool.
Do you
And like I
find
said, I got to meet a lot of those people yesterday that I don't typically get to meet in person. So it's always fun to interact with them.
so when markets are strong like they are this year, do you find maybe a little backing off because people really don't have to work as hard to
Yeah.
get good premiums? And I know with the co-op part of it, seems like producers
Good question.
sometimes don't want to deal with all the hassle because the market's pretty
Yes.
good and doesn't require that help.
Yes, so strong, yes, we will see some customers say, that they can't have the extra expense. It's not in the budget this year. So we'll see some customers going for, various reasons. They lost a buyer, it's not in their budget. Their cattle numbers are down, so maybe the cost of enrollment doesn't average out enough or is too high per head. So we'll see some different things like that that'll change. Drought conditions a couple years ago really changed that customer base on, that their numbers weren't there. Some of them didn't even have full loads. They were selling mixed loads of calves and stuff like that. So that really affects their overall plan. I would say this year, though, the number of customers that have left because of your example of the market being high and that premium spread that I referenced earlier is more narrow, is probably equal to the new customers that are coming in. I've not tracked that because we are in the middle of our busy season of enrollment. So what I've been feeling lately is probably a balance, a pretty good balance. I would say we're right at our general numbers of where we typically are.
Well, I don't want to hog the questions because I have one more, but if other people have questions, please go ahead.
Kelsey, I was just gonna prompt, did you want to go over what the fees are? So people know that.
Yeah, I didn't put that in this presentation, but so I'll start with Source and Age Care, because that's probably a program that would be the one you could start with and not be overwhelmed. So Source and Age Care is $750 plus travel, annual audit. So you would see that cost once a year. Your travel is going to vary depending on how close your auditor is. Is that auditor doing other audits on that trip? How soon do you need your audit done by? Like, do we have a short window or do we have time so that we can bundle in a trip? Our national average of travel expense is $250. I have not seen a ranch in Montana have a $250 travel expense yet. So that's above average, because above average for Montana. We have 2 auditors in Montana right now, one in the Dillon area and one in the Jordan area. So that helps cover our state to keep those travel expenses down. So if you're looking for an easy number, I always just say you should plan for $250 of your travel expense, but it's probably going to be significantly less than that. And Brenda and Laura can attest to what their travel has been over the years. And then the per head cost is associated with the EID tags, and that's a range from $4 to $3.25 per head. That per head includes the cost of the tag and the enrollment of that tag into the programs. It's a range like that because it's based on the number of tags you order in that year's time frame. So if you order less than 100 tags, you're at that $4. And if you order more than 1,000 tags, you're at that $3.25 per head. So the per head fees stay the same no matter what programs you're in. What changes is your audit cost. So let's say that you do Source and Age NHTC Care. That audit cost is $1,250 plus travel. So your NHTC is $750 and your care is a discounted cost of $500 instead of $750. We bump it down to $500 for a bundled enrollment. Your per head stays the same. If you do Source and Age NHTC Verified Natural and Care, your audit cost is $1,350 plus travel, plus your per head. So the difference between NHTC and natural is only $100 on your audit cost. So if you did NHTC only without care, it's $750. And if you do natural NHTC without care, it's $850. It's confusing to explain, but I put it in writing on a contract. That's why we ask what programs you want to be in, and so I can build that contract for you. And then if you look at the contract and you crunch your numbers and you're kind of looking at things, and maybe we send out a new contract that has different programs listed out. So that's one of the first things that we always do is what programs do you want to be in, so that I can explain the fee structure without being too confusing to it. We have some other programs too that I didn't mention, like grass-fed and non-GMO. Those are specific niche market programs, not necessarily tied to the USDA. And those costs would also be included in an annual audit cost fee. But like I said, no matter what programs you're in, that per head fee of $4 to $3.25, it's going to be the same. So if you did Source and Age only, and just that desk audit that I referenced, you're just going to pay that per head fee. You won't have the on-site audit fees. So the Source and Age is the baseline of the programs. No other hidden fees except for if you are in a taxable state. And then you would pay shipping costs for your EID tags. And then if you need a tagger or something like that, some sort of accessory tag backs, you'd see those fees as well. Bill, you want to ask your other question?
Well, I was looking on the question related to the demand side. So when people buy a certified animal at a sale, a video sale or whatever, so it's mostly buyers who are working for other clients that want to source those kind of cattle. I mean, I guess that's the majority of animals that sell this way, or are there people who are actually direct marketing that maybe don't have to go through verification because they just have a relationship with their customer?
Both. Yeah, we would see both. So I reference the video sales so much because that's where a majority of our customers is marketing load lots through video sale or through a private treaty with a buyer coming to the ranch directly, or depending on what that relationship looks like with a specialty buyer, that you guys got connected outside of a video sale platform or something else. So it's a private treaty, whatever that looks like for you. And then we do have some customers, I quickly referenced it on the licensing agreement, that would do finished product. So there would be a processor audit involved, and we're basically just confirming traceability of your animal until it gets cut up and packaged, that's the product that would be getting labeled with the care label. I don't have a lot of experience in that process, specifically me, but we do have some team members that have quite a few customers that do a direct to consumer marketing like that. And I know that you have to work with the USDA on the layout of the label and the claims you're making on the label and those type of things, but we do help facilitate that as part of the licensing agreement. So yeah, there's both private treaty, video sale, and direct to consumer. And then some of those ranchers are doing all three. So it kind of just depends on what works best for your operation.
Yeah, last question, sort of a macro thing on this, like what percent of cattle in the United States um, are actually plotted and certified in terms of the total market?
I have to get back to you on that answer because I
No rush.
actually have no idea. I have no idea what it would be like. Someone on our sales team probably has gotten that question and probably could have a better answer for you, but program cattle are a niche market no matter what. So it's, if you compared it to the grand scheme, it's probably not going to look like that many.
Yeah, yeah. And do you kind of track where these end markets are that are purchasing these cattle in terms of retail stores?
Yeah, it gets tracked that way because of the harvest facilities and how the tags have to get read at all of those approved locations. Our system tracks that. But it's not, it's proprietary info to those buyers. So that's one thing I didn't mention in this is we're not bonded or brokered to market your cattle. So we can't make those connections of you with a buyer and a buyer with you. One thing that we do have one gentleman on our team that kind of keeps track of, Jim is looking to buy 650 weights with this delivery, you know, and he'll let Doug Stanton on our team know that he's looking for that type of cattle. And then Doug will keep in mind when he hears from a ranch customer that's looking to sell something similar, he might connect the two of you. We have to have someone's permission to share a phone number, but then we step out of the middle of that. That's very rare though. That's so rare that we end up doing that because we're not bonded or brokered to market cattle. We don't want to show favoritism to one brand or another, because we work with all kinds. We look at all kinds of breeds and different labeling claims. So we always have to be really careful of that. So we don't even hardly see that much anymore, that you are utilizing the certificate and the programs for how you want to market your cattle, whether that's private treaty or video sale.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, it's a great program.
Welcome.
Okay, now I think we are going to hear some further input / experiences from Laura and Brenda. Whichever one of you might be interested in sharing first. I think Laura is pointing at Brenda.
I was gonna do the same thing. I guess, you know, a few quick, simple things. It has been an easy process. These are things that we're doing for the most part anyway. I'm not in the CARE program, but I do an HTC and Verified Natural. And so it's a pretty simple thing. I think the milk replacer is probably the hardest part. And I have found that there are some available that we can use that do qualify. And so and it's easy, gosh, questions, you know, if we have questions, getting a hold of somebody is pretty easy. I am not very adept at the passport program yet. I need to learn how to navigate that. And the audits have gone smoothly. I've you know, always felt comfortable with the person here auditing and their questions and what they want to see and all of that. They've been you know, from ranching backgrounds and all of that. So you don't feel like you've got somebody that's there really scrutinizing your operation and that they understand what's going on, and you don't have to explain the basics, which is nice. So Laura, I'll let you jump in.
Okay, sure. So just, I guess, some more like details. We put our tags in when we brand. We have done it before at preconditioning and then decided that branding is easier, just to keep better track of what's going on. So we just have like a spreadsheet that gets it has the EID number, and then we put the calf tag number. This is what they look like. There's a couple different brands. The numbers, you can get brands that have the numbers on both sides. That's a lot better in case you put the tag in backwards. Then the number's still there anyway. And the taggers themselves are maybe the biggest issue, is that the tags are really hard to go in if you have a tagger that doesn't work quite so well. So there's just kind of those details. Like Brenda said, most of the record keeping we're doing already anyway. So when they come for the audit, they have a lot of, they send you what you need to keep track of, but the main things are feed tags and any antibiotics or anything that you've used. We just, we treat very few cattle, and so it's easiest just to then hold those calves back on shipping day, and then we just take those to the ring or do something different with them. We could bump them down and do just age and source, but we found we could send them the same day, but then they have to go in a different spot on the truck, and it's not always worth it. It's usually like 3. So we just take them to the ring a different day.
Or come on your own plate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that it's really not a big deal. And like Kelsey mentioned, you have to determine how you keep track of those, and we just put a different color ear tag in. So it's not like it's anything complicated. And those are, yeah, like, yes, you have to be organized, but it's not complicated, and that's probably things that most people are keeping track of already. We keep replacement heifers. So at branding, basically we're picking our replacements when we brand. We do another sort of preconditioning, but everything but our replacements get the tags. But also they're the 840 tags, so they use those for banks vaccinating now also. So if we end up keeping something that we had planned to sell and they already have an EID tag in them, they can use them for banks now too. And then that's just an extra something to keep track of, but also works, and it's not a big deal. You don't put 2 tags in one animal. I feel like that's maybe like the only rule.
Yes, that's like one of the main rules. Please do not put 2 EID tags in one animal. It wreaks holy havoc on every supply chain. Every time they get processed, it's a nightmare. So I guess one thing I didn't mention in all of that is the 840 tags, and I could get really into this all, but those 840 tags are a really good thing to do and to use. It's not a program requirement, but because they can be the banks tag, they can be used for dual purpose program enrollment and disease traceability, depending on the class of cattle you're marketing, depending on where your cattle are going. Canada is a mandatory 840 tag country, so any cattle going into Canada have to have an 840 tag. So if you end up with a Canadian buyer, you're kind of already a shoe-in because you have those 840 tags. And then if you're selling like a banks vaccinated heifer, or you're selling an open heifer or something, like, you might as well use one tag. So you can get your tag through us, and that can be your program enrollment, or you can get your tag through the vet, and you can read that tag and submit that to us for enrollment, or the vet can use your IMI tag that you put in, and they would just do their enrollment, if you will, as their banks tag for their official certification. Some states also have some requirements of cattle coming in from certain states that have to have an 840 tag, and it's usually if they're sexually intact over a certain age, etc. For those of you that have kept up on some of the traceability changes that are probably going to be coming very soon and have been a part of a lot of discussions lately, the 840 tag just makes the most sense to use, but I can't require it. I can't tell you that you have to use that tag, but if you talk to me on the phone, we're talking about tags, I'm going to highly recommend, and I'm going to talk your ear off about why you should be getting the 840 tags. So thank you for bringing that up, Laura. So those are like specific things that I would talk to you about your operation and what makes the most sense for you, and where's your buyer and where are your cattle going. a good example of that is Montana cattle going into North Dakota. For whatever reason, there seems to be quite a bit of restrictions on that side. So they either need to be bangs vaccinated or they need to have an official traceable tag, which is the 840 tag. They don't recognize a 900 series tag as a traceable tag on the disease side of things. So we want to encourage the use of those 840 tags. And yes, there is definitely some issues and some complaints and some concerns every now and then on the taggers and applying the tags. And most of the time the complaints come from the females who are trying to like two-hand tag it on an older animal. Their ear is thicker and their skin is tougher and things like that. So it is a little bit harder. I have the same complaint myself. So there's definitely different types of taggers out there. Always that technology is trying to improve, but we give those recommendations to the tag companies and we pass along all the feedback that we get. And if you ever did have like some sort of defect or things like that, we'll get you connected with those tag companies to resolve that or trade tags out or whatever that may look like. So that's one cool thing about ordering your tags through us is we can help facilitate any problems or concerns related to the tags. If you don't get your tags through us and you get them through your vet, like all I have is what you gave me for information. So sometimes we might have some issues with cattle staying qualified because of the tags weren't ordered through us, because my traceability stops with the day you called me and reported those numbers over the phone or the email that you sent me with those tag numbers if they weren't ordered through us. So we do encourage people to order their tags through us because we can help with so many different things, and hopefully we're keeping more cattle compliant for longer if there were any tag issues.
Kelsey, one thing with treated cattle that maybe would be helpful to mention too is because similar to Laura, usually just have a few calves that are treated. I have been sending them most of the time with the rest of them. And so I send those numbers to you and they have a separate shipping certificate.
Yeah. So I should preface with that. So Laura and Brenda's marketing avenue is private treaty. Hopefully you guys let me share that. So their contract with their buyer is going to be specific to what the ranch has available and what the buyer is looking for or willing to contract. Not all buyers will take the treated calves. So your contract may reflect that 100% of the calves that get on that truck have to be verified natural, if that's what your contract says. But it can include 3% or 3 head or whatever that looks like on your contract with that specific buyer. So up to 3% of treated cattle. Typically they would have to be segregated on the truck, typically the last compartment, depending on the total number of head, right? So a lot of different factors go in there on how many head can go in each compartment on the truck, and what makes the most sense. So all of that is going to be specific to a buyer. Superior, Northern, Western, Cattle Country, those video sales, they're expecting that 100% of the load lot that is selling is verified natural. So that's what that contract looks like, unless that contract gets revised after the cattle are sold on the video. So you end up negotiating, something different of that contract to include those treated cattle. So that's not always the case to include them with your verified natural contracted cattle. But reporting those, so it can depend on the time of year that you put your tags in, like Laura said, depending on what's convenient for you. And you can put them in at any time. Birth, branding, preconditioning, you can even put them on in the calves 30 minutes before they get on the truck to go to the buyer. It doesn't matter when you put the tags in, as long as the calf has an EID tag before they leave the ranch of origin. A caveat to the timing of that is when you would typically treat cattle. And do they already have an EID tag? What's your treat ID look like? Do you add a tag? Do you notch an ear? It's going to vary for every ranch on the timing of when you're going to report those numbers. And maybe you don't put an EID tag in any treated animal, because that's what you're going to do up until you see how many total head you have as you get closer to shipping. So I typically hear from customers within 2 weeks of their shipping time frame. Some people will have like a cutoff. We're not going to send anything that we've treated if it's within 2 weeks of shipping time. And treatment can vary, right? Like we're not talking about an animal that's head down on the ground, ears are flat, clearly not going to be able to get on the truck type of treated animal. So the treatment reasoning is going to vary too. And maybe they were treated for, a light scours issue as a baby. And they recover, they do well, they fit with the rest of the calves. And then they could be part of that. And so that would be an example like Brenda was talking about, they could go on the end of the truck. And then some of them just don't send any NHTC cattle. So there's no EID tag numbers that they would send to me prior to shipping. Some ranches will have like 2 or 3 trucks that are natural and 1 truck that's NHTC, depending on the number of head. And then every now and then we'll have a natural ranch that will downgrade their entire calf crop. And usually something unfortunate happened, pink eye outbreak, severe pneumonia issue, and dust ammonia issues when we have drought conditions, and we call it mass treating. So they go to treating too many. Maybe one day they treated 10 head, the next day they treated 25, and they're like, wow, something is going on. They're working with their vet, and their vet has recommended an actual mass treat protocol. So it kind of just depends on what situation you're having, but I always recommend that you maintain your verified natural audit status to give you flexibility of keeping NHTC on those calves. Because the only reason why they don't qualify for natural is because you gave them an antibiotic. It is typically what's happening in those type of scenarios. So they're still going to qualify for NHTC because they didn't receive any hormones. Very different discussion if you were running heifers and a bull got in and you needed to lutalize for accidental exposure or something, like that they're going to lose their natural and their NHTC and only be eligible for source and age. So we call those downgrading. So it just depends on how far you need to downgrade them, depending on what was done to the animal to change what they're eligible for. So it's going to vary ranch to ranch on the type of scenario, but that's why you call me and ask me the questions, and or shoot me an email or text me or whatever, and we try to figure out what's going to be best for your operation depending on what's going on. I can't give you a recommendation of what you should treat with. I can't tell you what feed product you should use or not use. I can tell you if it's going to be compliant for the programs you are enrolled in or not. So we don't get biased to one brand or one product over another. Cool. Thank you, Brenda and Laura, for putting in a couple 2 cents. It's always nice to hear on the producer side some of the realistic things, I guess, that people are all thinking themselves too.
Mhm.
Yeah, this was fantastic. I just want to thank Kelsey again for being able to join and share all of the information on the various programs. But yeah, thank you to Laura and Brenda for being able to share some of your experiences, and thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day to join. I did throw in a real quick survey link just to, of course, tell us or provide feedback on this survey, but I'll include that link in the description with the recording of the webinar as well. So yeah, hopefully you can find all of that on the YouTube channel. We'll get that uploaded and also share it out in our September newsletter from Win It Aces. So perfect. Okay. Thank you all again for being able to join.
Thanks for having me. It was great
Yeah,
to
thank
visit.
you.
Yeah, we'll see ya.
Bye.